notacon.
I do tend to mumble, so if you can't hear me, don't hesitate to say, speak up. Welcome to History of U.S. Copyright. This is going to be a brief overall history, focusing more on where we were at the beginning of the country, coming up. Then I'm going to touch a little bit on Creative Commons. I'm not going to go on about exciting stuff like how evil copyright is. It's going to be boring. So you're all forewarned. What is copyright? Well, basically, Title 17 of the U.S. Code provides protection for authors, creators of their original works. It's a limited form of a monopoly for a set period of time that's ever so gotten longer. That creator has complete total control. He can dictate how his creative work is used. Now, I'm going to back up before the U.S. to kind of give a background of where everything came from. Back in 1662, there was the Licensing Act. Basically, what that was to the British Crown wanted to control everything that was printed. Authors really did not have rights to their own works. It was the printers who had the rights. And the Crown said, there are these registered books. These are the only things that can be printed. It was monitored and controlled by the Stationers Company, which was basically an organization of printers and booksellers. They dictated from orders of the Crown what was acceptable. After that lapsed in the 1690s, control, censorship loosened up, and then came the 1710 Statute of Anne, which is very similar to what we know as copyright. It stated that for 14 years, the author of the work had the monopoly. He had total last say on what was done with his creative work. If he was still alive at the end of that 14 years, he could re-register for an additional 14. After that, anyone could do what they wanted with that work. Now, it wasn't really much of a copyright as we know today, because if the author wanted to see financial gain from his work, he still had to go to these printers and booksellers who have always been used to having the last say on what was done with it. So really their control was no more than just on paper and make them feel good. Then comes, of course, the founding of the country. When the U.S. Constitution was written, they decided they're going to put in they're going to put in the provision that says Congress gets to dictate copyright law. Also, in the same single sentence, they set up for patent law, which in the beginning of the country, they were one and the same, basically. Then, at 1790, comes the Copyright Act, which is the very first U.S. copyright law. They built it off in the Statute of Anne from England, which is what they knew. Had the 14 years of registered protection, then the additional 14-year extension, and it is the first time where a public domain is actually defined. As in, if the author is dead at the first 14 years, it's public domain. Anyone can do what they want. If it's registered for the additional 14 at that end, that's it. There's nothing else that they can do. It becomes the public's. Then for a while, things are fine. 1831 is the first general revision. What happens is Congress decides to extend the primary term to 28 years because it brings it more in line with what was happening in Europe. Plus everything that was already under copyright that has not expired automatically gets that 28 years plus the possibility of 14-year extension. Also believe at this time they allowed it that the family, like the widow or widower and children of the author, could get that 14-year extension and still profit from the creative work. 1870 was the second general revision, where prior to 1870, administration of copyright law, so if you were to register your copyright, was done in the local district courts. They moved it from that to the Library of Congress. Side effect of that, we saw copyright registration skyrocket. So by 1897, they actually had to appoint a register of copyrights, which then later becomes the Copyright Office. In 1909, the third general revision. Basically, again, it's extending the term. Now you see an additional 28-year extension, plus all the new forms of media that have been out, such as photographs, different types of print, are now covered. They were covered before to an extent, but they're now specifically covered as what they are. I believe film was one of them where it was. No, that I think comes later. Never mind. All right. Now here, 1976. Now, depending who you talk to, it's either the fourth general revision of U.S. copyright law, or it is a total replacement of copyright law. A lot of things have changed. They address a lot of the new technological advances, such as motion pictures, which were always covered as photographs. They're now covered as motion picture. It also addresses new ways that things can be copied and what is copyrightable, what constitutes a violation of copyright. Like I said, who you talk to, it's either a totally new replacement or just a revision, but it does eliminate everything that was before is now replaced by the 1976 Copyright Act. Protection jumps from 28 years plus a 28-year extension to the life of the author plus 50 years after he dies. Plus, also, fair use is finally defined in copyright law. Prior to this, there was fair use, but anytime it was tested, you took your chances with the courts. (1992) is a big deal. They amend Section 304 of Title 17, which covers the renewal. It now becomes automatic. So now automatically, upon an author's death, his copyright is still good for 50 years. Prior to that, it had to be registered. Now, 1998 is, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, known as the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act. I guess Sonny was tired of screwing up Cher's life. He thought he'd get his hands in screwing up everyone else's. Protection jumps to 70 years after death. But the upside that most people don't talk about is it really doesn't change for things such as libraries, universities doing research, because that last 20 years of a copyright, if you're using it for non-commercial, educational type uses, and you're a library, a university, some sort of research facility, consider it public domain. Do what you will. But it has to be non-commercial. All right, 1998 Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Not going to talk a whole lot about this because everybody probably knows more than I do. Again, the big thing is there's new types of media, covers mostly internet related digital formats. Big thing that everyone has the problem with is Section 1201, which prevents circumvention of any type of encryption or security measures on these new digital medias. People go to jail, because they discover that ROT13 encryption is, been around since 1970 something, and almost any Usenet news reader does it automatically for you. Now this brings me pretty much to my real point of this. In 2001, a bunch of really smart guys get together, create Creative Commons. It's a licensing system, works inside of US copyright law, because when you make something, it doesn't matter if it's published or not. You draw a funny picture on a cocktail napkin, that's copyrighted. You can dictate how that's used till the day you die, and then your children can use it for another 70 years. Well, maybe you want people to use that cocktail napkin picture, but you want to still be known as the creator of it. Well, with Creative Commons, you can set up a license that says, freely use this as long as you attribute it to me as my creation. You can do that under normal copyright law in a sense by having a bunch of lawyers draft up all kinds of contracts and stuff, but somebody has to come and bother you. Creative Commons, you do it, you set it free to the world. No one has to take the time and effort to get a hold of you and ask your permission if they follow your guidelines that you set forth in your Creative Commons license. I wish I knew a lot more about this, but they are changing so much, I can't keep up with it. And this guy over here is going to call me on anything I do say wrong about it. You know, most of my stuff, I'm a printer by trade. That's where my copyright experience is at. I deal with print media. I don't really know very much about music, other than I hate top 40 radio. A specific case here of Creative Commons licensing would be these things. It's a project we're running here at Notacon. Basically what it is these are blank sketchbooks, and people are encouraged to write in them, draw in them, express themselves. And then at the end, what we are going to do is we're going to scan these all in, all these images, all these writings, put them together into a PDF format that you could take anywhere, down to your local Kinko's, print yourself out a book, free of charge. Feel free to build off other people's ideas, as long as you're not selling it commercially, using it for your own personal gain. It's part of what drives the guys behind Creative Commons is let's build on everyone's knowledge, that real sense of community that seems to get lost now by the big corporations. Any questions? I know I ran through this stuff pretty fast, so I'm sorry about that. But I will try my best to answer any questions anyone may have.
What do you recommend as far as finding Creative Commons content? I know there's a number of search engines geared towards certain types of content and things like that.
I find the best thing to do is to go to creativecommons.org, their website. I mean, they have, you know, that's part of something they do as a clearinghouse for it.
Yahoo also just CC search.
Yeah, I
don't know the URL. I searched at Yahoo/CC, but
yeah, and I've read a little bit about that prior to coming here. They, I guess it's kind of up in the air whether Yahoo is just ripping off someone else.
No, well, all Yahoo is doing is because we at Creative Commons also have our own search engine.
Yes.
Search desk.
That's usually where I suggest starting.
Right. Ours we actually crawl and read the RDF as their web pages. Yahoo's just using license link backs. So they're taking their existing search database and tracing link backs to some license leaves. And that it's not a guaranteed indicator, but it's fairly true indicator.
Didn't I see something recently about a way to embed Creative Commons license information into binary files, like say in image headers and stuff like that? Is that something these search engines would pick up on?
Search engines would not pick up on the binary information.
Google images might, if they start looking for it.
They might, but
doesn't suggest that.
yes, most search engines, matter of fact, I think all search engines are only looking at text. They don't even look inside Flash files.
Isn't that the whole idea, though, of the semantic web and RDF?
Yes, our RDF is machine readable text. I mean, I guess you can read it yourself, but it's prettier to look at it through a parser. Any questions on like copyright? More on Creative Commons? I feel like I've only used maybe 5 minutes of your time, and I'm feeling really bad about this. You're expecting some awesome speech on the caliber of Lawrence Lessig, and I let you down.
What do you think? I'm sorry, I'm not sure where it is. What kind of ideas have you heard of floating around to help promote the use of Creative Commons where appropriate for corporate interests, where they're usually more focused on what dollar signs in their eyes, wouldn't normally consider something like this? They have no reason not to. How can we encourage this?
How can we encourage corporate America to use Creative Commons?
Obviously, they're not going to for everything. The
No.
Motion Picture Association of America is not going to release a Creative Commons movie as a blockbuster movie under the CC. But
No.
they might release their trailers under the CC or things like, or little things.
Well, really, I deal with these guys on a daily basis in my work with corporate America, like the Disneys and MGMs, and they don't see any value of Creative Commons, really, because to them, once something is theirs, they don't want to give it up. They want to go way back to prior to 1662, when copyright was felt belonged to the corporation, i.e. the printers, way back then, and it lasted forever. They owned it, till the end of time. That's how they feel. As to them, any way of convincing them otherwise, it's going to be a very long, hard road for people to convince them. I guess the best way is for the little guy to be not depending so much on them, on the corporations to get their message out, which is one of the beautiful things of the internet, is now one guy alone in his den at home can put up a website, share his self-made movie or his music, his books, whatever. And eventually what will have to happen is, if everybody individually is releasing their stuff under a Creative Commons type license, the big companies are going to have to take notice, and because there isn't going to be enough media for them. The way they work, pretty much everything is work for hire, which means they pay you. You never created what you just created. They did. It belongs to them. It always has. It always will be.
Yes, but I would speculate that the open source software movement probably had very similar hurdles. Even though it started on the opposite end of the spectrum, it had an advantage there. It's still, there's some definite parallels you can draw between Battlefield and Fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of commercial software companies aren't never going to see the value of open source software. That doesn't mean they might not benefit from it sometime, and might eventually think, oh well, this isn't bringing us any money directly, and this could help a lot of people. Other people might improve this for us. We could release this and still keep this moneymaker of ours private.
Yeah, with the software companies, I can only think of one, two if you want to stretch it, Novell and IBM, who are able to do that right now, who are actually using open source. I don't know enough about software, but that's
understandable. But though the hardcore open source evangelists would probably take issues with the specifics of the licensing, we've gotten to a point where even Microsoft is releasing open source software, and I think that says a lot to how far they've come.
Yeah, and it will be hard, and there could be a day when Disney will decide, hey, yeah,
Can I comment?
yes, please.
I would. It's interesting to draw the software analogy because I think that if you look at the way open source software is written to corporations, that before they started releasing things, they found value in consuming things, and so they found value in consuming the kernel and high singularity based on everything.
Yes.
So I think that part of CC's mission is not just to license, but also to make it lower the transaction cost of licensing media and licensing works. And so I think that as corporations see value in consuming CC licensed work and see how it lowers this barrier to entry and this transaction cost, I think that may, in an analogous way, drive adoption of CC licensing.
Yeah, because right now, media companies are in the business really of producing content, not consuming it. One of the things, though, that is going for Creative Commons that open source really didn't have, like you said, a lot of the evangelists will argue over the license. You don't see so much of that. Matter of fact, hardly any at all, really. Pretty much people who are behind Creative Commons, behind it 100% of the way. He's open source software. But Stallman is pretty much against everything. But it will be a very long, hard road. Someday it may happen. What I think it'll go is you'll see smaller companies that will adopt it first, because what they need is they have to first see the value in consuming something. If 100 people release on the internet under Creative Commons short clips of their trip somewhere, and the company decides, I'm going to make a documentary on the trip to the Grand Canyon, and find all this work already there, they will love to have something for nothing. And as long as the license is compatible enough so that they can profit in some way, they will adopt it and use it. But big media companies are never going to give away something for free, because their product is the creative work. Where a software company, they can give away the software, but they're selling the service. Yeah, I'm making a generalization.
This is kind of random, but you mentioned Disney.
Yes.
Is Mickey Mouse copyrighted under this type of stuff? Like, is he going to expire?
Not for a very long time.
Did they get a special extension or something?
That is a possibility. I'm not sure on the specific, but Mickey Mouse was to expire, and then came the Copyright Extension Act, and there's a bunch of other things, such as, because Disney's considered a work, or Mickey Mouse is considered a work for hire, which actually has a longer, I believe, it escapes me right now. I want to say no, it's not 95 years. It's
Corporate authors have a longer
yes.
copyright lifespan than individual authors. It's pretty ironic that, well, ironic I guess, but Mickey was set to expire in 1975, or 1977, and then the
76.
Act passed, and then the terms, and you set to expire in 99. That's the 98 Copyright Act.
Yeah.
Saved it right there.
Yeah, because what it did is, yeah, it's, and there has been cases in the past where specific publishers or companies have actually gotten Congress to pass a special private extension for their copyright. I didn't really go into any of that because I was just trying to cover a generalization of copyright law. Just was kind of trying to do a setup for Creative Commons stuff, just so that people knew why Creative Commons is something that is needed now.
I would think that Creative Commons, I think because other books and one of the things that's really hard to find are adequate photographs. And of course there are all these stock services. They're like
Yes, the stock, yes.
But the Creative Commons, I know there are also stock photos available under Creative Commons as well. But I was thinking, would there be an advantage to, or is that the big fear that some advantage to not getting any money? There might be an advantage to, I mean, clearly the transaction costs and licensing costs. But the biggest advantage would be to nonprofit organizations or educational organizations.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where you'll start to see it happen more, is they will start to license stuff where you can, I mean, it's kind of already built into copyright where under fair use, where certain non-commercial uses of images and sounds, movies are acceptable. But as soon as you try to profit off it, it's no longer fair use.
It's getting tougher because a lot of nonprofits are setting up for-profit fundraising businesses next to their nonprofit organization. So some things are getting really fuzzy for some projects. I'm thinking of some I've experienced. It's a really tough. You know, people are just not aware of where life is going.
Yeah. Yeah, I run into that quite regular in my day job, where we will actually get an order from a university or a nonprofit organization that's ran through a university. They can't even use their own university logo because they don't have the proper permission, and they can't get the permission because there's that area where, well, this is copyrighted, we can't use it for anything but what some guy or lawyer is saying. And that's where it gets fuzzy. As far as like those stock photo places, I've been to them. Licensing fees can get outrageous really quick. That's where Creative Commons would be really good. That's one of the things, if you visit their website, they actually talk about is, and right now Creative Commons' biggest problem is getting the word out that it's there, getting people to use it. It's part of why came up with this sketchbook project idea. You know, it lets people use it, let people see that it's not a bad thing. It's great to share information, ideas, and it's kind of a funny thing. You can't copyright an idea, but at the same time, with the way copyright law is written in the US right now, that's what's happening really, is you're locking up ideas because it's really the representation of the idea. And I could sit here and say copyright is bad. And, well, anyone can take that and use it because that's an idea, a thought. But if I write it on the board and you take a picture of it, well, you can't use that picture, period. I just locked up that idea, so to speak. Any comments? How poorly I'm doing? You guys